Hello, so this is going to be my ocean narration video number 2 for Module 4, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So first I'm going to just go over what I'm going to be talking about. First I'm going to introduce the concept of a socio-ecological system. Next I'm going to discuss just some of the prompts for this module, and then I'm going to end with some closing remarks. So first, just based on our readings and lectures from the module, I kind of derived this broad but really explanatory definition of what a socio-ecological system is. Basically, it's a complex adaptive system that's composed of many human and non-human entities that interact within networks and are interdependent. They're also able to adapt to changes within their social and ecological environments. And one additional thing to note is that the system is basically it's constantly co-evolving, which is another important thing to note. Next, we're going to talk about Ostrom's framework. So the framework itself helps to identify relevant variables for studying SESs and provides a common set of variables for organizing SES studies. There are several identified variables within the framework, but the figure above shows the relationships between 4 first-level or core variables. The goal of the framework is to establish a comparable database to ensure the gathering of research findings about processes affecting the sustainability of various SESs, and these can be forests, pastures, coastal zones, water systems, etc., all around the world. Next, we're going to talk about how to apply the SES framework. So first, you'd want to identify the SES variables relevant to the system. So that's going to be, again, any of these 4 variables, the 4 core variables. Next, you're going to want to identify the variables' environmental implications, basically the pros and cons of the variables. So for example, if you're looking at a fishery and wanting to improve upon stocking the fishery, you're going to look at the pros and cons of different stocking methods. Next, you're going to identify the relationships between the variables. So you can look at the consumers and the types of stockings, or the fishery and the types of stocking, and etc., just identifying relationships between these variables and how they may be affected by changes. Then you're going to analyze those relationships and the feedback and take the data from that, analyzation, and you're going to use it to refine the variables to make them more sustainable. So next, we're going to look at an example of a marine SES, and I decided to look at a small-scale fishery for stocked barnacles that's located along the Galician coast in northwest Spain. With these barnacles and most benthic organisms, they're predicted to be particularly impacted by climate change. And in this study in particular, the stocks were analyzed and categorized by ecological vulnerability and social sensitivity, and how those would be impacted by climate change. And if you look at the image along the west coast, you'll see the index and the socio-ecological vulnerability. The 2 locations that are predicted to be most impacted are going to be the 2 with the pie charts. There you can see the blue is going to represent social sensitivity, and the orange is going to represent ecological vulnerability, and there you can see how those are going to affect those 2 specific areas. So lastly, just my closing remarks. From the module, I kind of concluded that there are unlimited socio-ecological systems throughout the world, and Ostrom's framework kind of lays out a plan for converting these ecosystem interworkings and resources into a complex system where sustainable management practices can be developed and applied. And if sustainable resource management can't be achieved globally, at least the framework kind of helps to develop a database where sustainable practices can be shared and then ideally applied to different systems. And that's going to be it for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to receiving feedback.